going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Not the prime time, bitch!
Long live the new Fletch.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
We've got to return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your Brontosaurus Rowan.
And this is Kermit the Frog 0-pound dumbbell Mike.
And I guess I'm going to go with T-Rex Colton.
And welcome back. We're just chilling here in the Jurassic era of life. I have nothing to follow that joke, so...
Do you have to read me for being ancient? Like, come on. Give me a break.
I was going to say, I wish you gave me a heads up we were doing dinosaur-themed intros. I would have picked something better than a Tyrannosaurus.
I feel like I would have...
I mean, listen, at least I picked an animal. Like...
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I'd probably pick something better than a Brontosaurus. I feel like that's not Rowan the kid's favorite dinosaur, so...
And, like, clearly I'm off base because I just said something better than a Tyrannosaurus, and obviously there is nothing better than a Tyrannosaurus, so I take that back. I made the best choice already.
You're right.
So, we know where we should start. Let's talk about what media we're consuming, because I know everyone's clampering at the bit for us to get into this episode.
What the fuck is clampering? Girl, what is clampering?
I don't know.
I need to know. Is this some kind of, like...
What is it, clamoring?
Freaky shit that you're intoing?
Is it like the glamping of clamoring? Clampering? I'm not sure.
I gotta Google what a clamper is.
I literally feel like I just got punched in the head. I'm so disoriented right now.
Yeah, I
like
think
you got me all turned around and upside down and backwards.
It might make sense a little bit, because apparently clamper is to patch together, especially clumsily.
Oh.
So that's exactly what you did with that transition.
Rowan didn't know that.
No,
he just made up a word.
I totally knew it, guys. I totally knew it. I don't know why you're judging me whatsoever.
Use it in a sentence other than clampering at the bit.
I'm sorry, guys, okay?
That's what I thought.
Ro not smart. So yeah, what have we been reading? What have we been watching? What have we been listening to? Anything, guys? Let's start with you this time, Mike.
Oh, me. Thank you. I just finished the book that I've been reading for, honestly, a few weeks, which I probably mentioned last time, which was Ronnie Spector's biography. It was really good. Really, really good. So I kind of, like, was pacing myself and, like, parceling it out and, like, only reading it, like, a few pages a day, essentially, or, like, in chunks every few days. And I'm about to start... I bought a new copy of Jean Genet's Querelle just in time for Pride Month, so I'm going to read that next. And other than that, I've been watching the new All-Stars, All-Winner season of Drag Race. Hallelujah, praise, everybody. I want to know your thoughts on it. And actually, okay, so I have to admit that... So the new season of Stranger Things just came out.
Oh, yeah.
And I had never finished... I don't know, what's it, like chapter 3 or whatever, because right from the beginning, when it very first came out, like we're talking like, it came out on like Friday and like Sunday, me and my friend decided that we were going to watch it, and we watched all of it together, and so we started watching season 3 together, and I want to say that was a couple months before COVID, maybe not, but like something happened that we kind of like put the brakes on it for a little bit, and then everything kind of went haywire, and I think that my friend watched it without me, and I got angry about it, and so I was like, I'm not finishing it. And then COVID happened, and I was like, well, we're not getting another season for like 5 years, clearly, anyway. And I kind of just sort of... I always wanted to go back and finish watching that season, and I just never did because I kept thinking, it's been too long now, I'm gonna forget all the details. But then the 4th season just came out, and my god, like, I don't know where people are finding the time to watch all of this shit in like 3 fucking days, but all the spoilers everywhere. I was like, shit, I gotta go back now and like use every minute of my free time to binge through what I didn't finish of season 3 so I can start watching season 4. So I finally did that. That's what I've been doing for the last few days. It's really all I've watched other than Drag Race and shitty old episodes of Real Housewives of New Jersey. So honestly, that's all I got. I haven't really watched any movies or anything. I've been a bit of a piece of shit. What about you, Ro?
Me. So I feel like I made up for a little bit of lost time just because last episode when we had Jill on, I literally had nothing. I just hadn't watched anything. So I was like, Rowan, you gotta make up for that. So one thing I did watch, I got to check out The Sadness on Shudder. Had to see what the hype was about. Everyone was going crazy. A lot of other podcasts I follow were like putting episodes out about it, and it was alright. It was a lot more hype than I think it was worth. You know, it was touted as this like super extreme, super gory, like a lot of sexual violence, and it seemed like I was gonna wince and want to shut it off. That's what everyone, you know, kind of everywhere that you read about it and all the podcasts are like, oh, it's so sick. And then I watched it and I was just kind of like, I don't know. I think I've seen worse things in like shitty 90s movies or something. Like, it was gory, but it was like comical gore. It wasn't like, it was, you know, almost like Evil Dead gore where you weren't turned off by it. So yeah, I saw that. I mean, hopefully you guys got to check out Men, if you're listening. Me and Colton did a Now Slain on it. I think we both pretty enjoyed it.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, enjoyed it. It's the right word. Go
listen to the podcast and see what we think about it. Stop trying to get all the secrets on this episode. And then, yeah, I just did some rewatching of stuff. Watched Ernest Goes to Camp, which is always a good time for me. That's, you know, one of my favorite Ernest movies. That's the one I kind of grew up with. I rewatched Drop Dead Fred again. I was at a friend's place, and he had never seen it before, and he was like, I know you got that Sweet Vinegar Syndrome copy. So come watch it on my 84-inch TV. And I was like, yes, I will. So that was a good time. Watch Brain Scan, which was definitely, like, it's going to be a pick in the coming year or so.
How has it not been one of your picks already?
I don't know, but this movie
screams Rowan.
It's so fun. It is so fun. I mean, it's essentially just like a PG knockoff of Nightmare on Elm Street, but with like virtual reality and and like it's like awesome like Seattle grunge soundtrack. Like it's super MTV. It's like it's got what's his name, guys? You know, it's got the kid from Terminator 2 in it. He's
Edward Furlong.
Yeah, Edward Furlong is the star of it, and yeah, it's fantastic. And then the only other thing I'll mention, or the last two things, I rewatched Dirty Work. You know, gotta get the Norm Macdonald in. I popped up on Tubi, so I was like, oh, I gotta watch this. And I'm a big fan of Dirty Work. I think Chris Farley's last performance, I think, is that one, or it's like his second last. He's hilarious in it. And then I watched the found footage phenomenon on Shudder.
Oh, I've been looking to watch that. I keep forgetting about it. I gotta check it out.
It was pretty good. So it's just a documentary about found footage, where it started and, you know, where it's going and how, you know, obviously there's a lot of Blair Witch in it, just kind of the craze Blair Witch started. But definitely interesting if you don't know a lot about found footage. I'm not a huge found footage guy, like, other than Blair Witch. So it was kind of interesting. It was kind of cool to see, like, you know, there was, like, another found footage movie that came out, like, pretty much at the exact same time as Blair Witch, with the exact same story, but it was, like, different parts of the U.S., like they had no connection to each other, and they just, one was super low budget and didn't, like, more low budget than the Blair Witch, and they just, like, you know, that one didn't thrive. So, yeah, it was just kind of cool to see, you know, how it's gone, and, you know, they do, like, some interesting critiques about, you know, movies like Cloverfield, and kind of how big studios have, you know, taken a hold of found footage and what they've done with it.
Do they mention Lake Mungo by any chance? I'm just curious.
Yes, they do.
Cool.
Very, very much so. And the last thing I'll say is, like, Mike, I have been pounding through Stranger Things 4 and loving it. Absolutely loving it. I think we're on episode 4 or 5 now. Like Mike, I was the same way. Like, I was kind of putting it off because, you know, Stranger Things, one of those things I really like, but then I binge it all and then I don't have it anymore. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to take my time. But then, like, the memes are already starting and all this stuff.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it's exhausting.
So I'm like, fuck, like, I have to see it because I don't want it to be spoiled. So, yeah, we're on episode, I think, 5. And yeah, I'm loving it. I'm assuming, like, the biggest budget they've ever gotten for the show.
Oh, I think it's like $30 million an episode or something for this season.
God.
Yeah.
It's insane. It looks better than any of the other seasons. Like,
that means Winona is getting a fucking paycheck, though. So.
Oh, yeah.
Hallelujah to that.
Does it look 3 times as good as The Lighthouse, though, is what I asked you.
I don't
know. Per
episode
what with that budget.
Talking about? What are you talking about?
That is very hard. But, like, they obviously use a lot of the budget for, like, music. Because they've licensed, like, a shit ton of, like, 80s music. You know, I think we were talking about on text how apparently...
Say it.
Everyone's discovered who Kate Bush is now. Like, she just came out.
I want to just say, for the record, as the resident Kate Bush freak... First of all, my phone was blowing the fuck up for like 4 days because everybody was texting me memes and going like, oh my god, this made me think of you. And, you know, it's like, thank you. But also, it's like, there's a huge part of me that's like really glad that all these youngsters who were not alive when that song came out are into her because she is one of the most phenomenal artists that has ever recorded music.
I saw the song went number
1.
But
also, there's a very small part of me that's like gatekeeping and like, fuck you, find her the way that everybody else did. You know what I mean? But like, that's just me being like a curmudgeon. Like, I want her to get paid and I want everybody to know who she is. And that's like an insanely popular song anyway. It's not like they picked some deep cut. So.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's, I think they've been doing a good job. They definitely took like a hard turn in the horror with this season, which is, you know, kind of the things I was hoping. That we've got a lot of the sci-fi nostalgia vibes of that, like, Stephen King-ish stuff, but I always feel the show never, like, dives into, like, real horror stuff, where this gives us, like, a traditional horror monster and that kind of thing. And I really like what they're doing. The episodes are crazy long. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, hour 20 minutes an episode. So you're just watching full-length movies. But it's honestly been flying by. I felt season 2 and 3 kind of dragged for me, especially 3. But this one, I don't feel the time at all. They're really, really well done.
Honestly, just say the whole Russian subplot of 3 completely dragged it down.
Yeah, but the Russian subplot, like, I think it pays off this season because I really like it in this season.
Okay, good.
So, yeah, that's enough for me. Colton, what have you been consuming?
Yeah, I haven't been watching Stranger Things. I'm one of those people that I feel like a Bloody Disgusting, or somebody had an article out about a week or two before the first season dropped, basically telling everyone to look forward to it. And I hopped onto watching the first season, and I watched like 2 or 3 episodes the first day it came out, and then I watched an episode here or there for the next week, and I don't know, it's just never been my vibe. I don't know if it's maybe I'm a little bit younger than you guys. Like, I'm a 90s baby, so all this 80s nostalgia does nothing for me.
Oh, yeah, plus, the nostalgia is a big part of it.
Plus, it's also like, 80s nostalgia is super common right now. It's in like, there's multiple movies a year that come out that that's what it is nostalgia bait for the 80s. So,
Firestarter.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? So many synth scores and whatnot, right? And all these, requels of 80s movies coming out nowadays, right? So it's something that I think is fine. I was looking at maybe going back to season 1, but then I hear like, season 2 is the worst season, or then in your case I hear season 3 is the worst season. I'm like, bro, I don't want to watch 2 bad seasons when I barely like the show anyway, so I don't think it's going to be something I'll get around to, but I do appreciate what everyone's been saying about how this one kind of takes a real turn into the horror vibes, and specifically Nightmare on Elm Street. I've heard a lot of people referencing, I mean,
yeah,
he's in the show as well from what I understand, so
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, what I've been watching a lot lately, like a lot of it kind of falls into that 3-star territory where everything is varying levels of fine to good. So, I'm not going to really take up too much time talking about any of that. There's probably like half a dozen things I could point out there. But what took up most of my time last week was a new Apple TV Plus nature documentary called
Oh my god.
Prehistoric Planet, which of course they released it just at the perfect time for tonight's movie choice. But do either of you guys like those David Attenborough nature documentaries at all? Like,
oh yeah,
I'm what I've seen, I do enjoy them. Yeah,
I'm a sucker for nature.
Okay, I wasn't sure if either it would be like your guys' vibe or not, but yeah, I mean, it just kind of rolled out an episode a day last week covering the life of dinosaurs based on the different biomes they lived in. So, I mean, some of the episodes weren't as good as others, but I mean, if you're like a fan of the Planet Earth documentaries and you love dinosaurs and, can kind of look past some shoddy CGI from time to time, I mean, you'll probably enjoy it. And I mean, if you have kids, like, they'll probably lose their minds and actually believe like dinosaurs are still walking the earth, right? So, it was pretty nostalgic for me as a dinosaur kid.
Wait a second, they're not? I'm confused now.
I mean, some of the footage looked like they still were, so I don't know. And then there was some others that I was like, oh, dude, this looks like it may have been put onto a computer 65 million years ago. So some of it was not that great. But more importantly than Prehistoric Planet, after seeing advertisements for like at least 2 years, Top Gun Maverick finally hit theaters. And I'm just as surprised as anyone else to kind of say that this might be one of the best sequels I've ever seen, which is absolutely crazy to say, but I do think so. Like in 5 to 10 years, people will be mentioning this alongside like Aliens and T2 and The Dark Knight and Empire Strikes Back as just, the sequels that surpass the originals. Like, obviously I'm not saying Top Gun Maverick or Top Gun is comparable to those movies, but I'm saying that this movie far exceeds the original, where like the original Top Gun is Morbius and Top Gun Maverick is like Dracula. It's like completely different.
The original Top Gun's Morbius. Top Gun Maverick is Morbius 2.
Also, can we just be clear that the original Top Gun is already topped by Hot Shots, but we won't go there.
I actually haven't seen Hot Shots because like I have no affinity for the original Top Gun. Like I only watched it within the last week. I do not care. So that's what I'm saying. It's not like a nostalgia play or anything.
Yeah.
Like this one actually made me care. It like builds a diverse cast of like these lovable characters that obviously you follow and root for. It has like a deceptively simple plot, which usually I would say is a detriment, and it might sound like one, but you actually have to buy into it for this movie to work at all, because you need to understand how often like the stakes are constantly being raised. Like without the intimate knowledge of like the mission at hand, you wouldn't know how big of a deal it is when like records are broken or when rules are broken or ultimately like what's at stake. So I'm glad that it was very simple. It was easy to follow. And then there's the action set pieces, which the first 10 minutes of this movie has better action set pieces than like 95% of summer blockbusters. Like one that is like good enough for the movie's climax, but then this movie has set pieces that rival and surpass that like another 3, 4, 5 times throughout the movie. Like it's absolutely wild. So I don't know. Then when I was watching, I was like, it makes it even more exciting that knowing this movie is all done practically. Where the cast, they had to train for 3 months in like a flight school to even be able to withstand like sitting in an F-18 as it's like flying at these speeds. They had to learn to work their own cameras, these really complex IMAX rigs, and like review their own footage. They had to adjust their flight paths to get best lighting. Like it's absolutely insane like what they had to do for this movie. So, I don't know. Obviously, I think it's pretty awesome. I'm not a fan of Top Gun. Love Top Gun Maverick. I would advise anyone who at all cares about the original Top Gun, to go see it on the biggest screen possible with the best speakers, because to me, it wasn't like just a movie. Like, it did feel like an experience. Like, I like thoroughly enjoyed it. So, yeah, I'd highly recommend it. And then, if you're like Mike and your eyes have been glazed over, it does end on a Lady Gaga song, which I thought was pretty interesting. I was like, yeah.
I'm sorry. Your recommendation obviously is like really pushing me to want to go see it, but I fucking hate Tom Cruise with every fiber of my being. So I cannot go see a Tom Cruise movie. I can't do it. I can't.
No, it's the type of thing when I was watching it, I was like, all right, obviously this guy's like everybody's favorite Scientologist, right? Like Tom Cruise, like. And as I was watching it, I don't know, it was just like everything else is so good in spite of him. And he is also actually good in the movie, like where he's actually acting, like having to work with actually like complex character emotions. He's not just a badass flyboy. He has to actually deal with some of the things that has happened in his past that like, yeah, I don't know. It really worked for me, but I completely understand the Tom Cruise. Like.
Yeah. I just like, it's one of those things where it's been overtaken in my brain now. Like I can't compute anything else. Like there's sometimes when I'm watching things that like I can push all of the like other shit out and kind of like disconnect from it. But for whatever reason, it's been over 10 years that I can't watch a Tom Cruise movie. I can't do it. Even like some of my old favorites that I liked like when I was much younger, like, Magnolia and stuff. I want to go back and rewatch, but I'm like, I can't do it. I just like, I literally don't want to look at his face. So
yeah,
I'm like the best thing Tom Cruise ever did, as somebody very wise once said on Twitter, was give Nicole Kidman that amazing photo shoot of the paparazzi taking pictures of her from when she walked out after getting divorced and like cheering in the parking lot in her like sweats.
No.
Which is the best reaction pic to everything, by the way.
Yeah, I wouldn't usually say I'm a huge fan of Tom Cruise either, but I don't know. I really liked him in this movie, so I don't know. Maybe I'm going clear. Maybe I'm converting to Scientology now. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, that and you're going to join the Navy or not the Navy, whatever it is, the Air Force, the Navy, the complete opposite.
No. They actually are from the Navy. You had it right. They're like the Air Force of the Navy.
Okay.
No, you had it right. What were you saying, Rowan? Sorry?
I just said I want to know where our cut is, because it sounded to me like the Top Gun marketers got to you. You're just...
Yeah, hashtag ad. Hashtag ad.
So any other Top Gun sequels, come to the It's Slates podcast first.
I'll figure out how to make it a horror movie. I did so with Jurassic Park for this, this pick. So we'll figure out how Top Gun 3 is a horror movie.
Well, I think that's a appropriate time to get into the trailer for our pick. We're going to 1993, guys. Were you even alive, Colton?
I was 1 year old when this came out. I'm from 1992.
I act like I was like so much older. I mean, I was 87, so I was, I wasn't that old.
Yeah.
I was old enough. I was old enough, I guess. But yeah, let's get in the trailer for indie film Jurassic Park.
On June 11th, Universal Pictures invites you
Hey, look at this.
to discover the wonder.
Can I touch it?
Sure. Experience the power.
You feel that?
And live an adventure 65 million years in the making. Jurassic Park. Rated PG-13. Starts Friday, June 11th at theaters everywhere.
Jurassic Park was directed by Steven Spielberg and written by David Cope. And
Who's
the story.
Steven Spielberg guy. I've never heard of him.
Yeah. He's a upcoming auteur director. He's doing big things, making moves.
I heard he's a hack.
Fuck you, man. Anyways, the story is as follows. A wealthy entrepreneur secretly creates a theme park featuring living dinosaurs derived from dino DNA. Before opening day, he invites a team of experts and his 2 eager grandchildren to experience the park and help calm the worries of investors. However, the park is anything but amusing as the security systems go offline and the dinosaurs escape. Welcome to Jurassic Park.
So, our first experiences with this film. This was your pick, Colton. We'll start with you. I'm assuming this is the first time you've ever seen this movie.
Yes, as I stand here in my Jurassic Park T-shirt that I owe 2 or 3 copies of, and yeah, this is very much not the first time I've seen this movie. This, honestly, I've heard you guys say like, oh, I've seen it 100 times, for different movies. This might be a movie for me that I've seen 100 times. I'm not sure, because I was absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid, and literally my oldest memory, like period, is from Jurassic Park, and it's from, I can date it back to when I was 3 years old. I walked in when my parents were watching it on like VHS, and it was the raptors in the kitchen scene. And I remember it like so vividly because it scared the shit out of me like when I was 3 years old. And my mom like blames this movie for like me having so many nightmares of like dinosaurs trying to eat me at night and whatnot as I was growing up. So yeah, like literally I was 3 years old when I first saw a clip of this movie. I know for sure I owned it by the time I was 5 because one of my aunts like gifted it to me as a Halloween present, weirdly enough. I was like knocking on her door, and her boyfriend at the time, like, I don't think they had any like candy or anything, so he just gave me Jurassic Park because I was obsessed with dinosaurs. So yeah, like, dude, I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but it's definitely too many to count.
I like this Halloween tradition. I'm gonna start that where I'm just gonna give copies of Jurassic Park to kids.
Dude, like you have enough Blu-rays and VHS and whatnot. If you wanted to give out, copies of movies, you'd easily be able to do it.
They would be the most popular house on the block.
Just all these like really gross horror movies. Here's a copy of a Serbian film, to this 5-year-old kid. Oh man. But yeah, what about you, Mike? When's the first time you've seen or saw Jurassic Park?
Okay, I can't say exactly when. I know it was like back in the like early days because it's been such a like staple of sleepovers and birthday parties. I can't remember which it was. I feel like it was probably like a sleepover or something, like shortly thereafter, the VHS days, and I just remember it was like a bunch of us watching it, and yeah, it was just sort of like there in the background then my whole life. Okay, I mean, listen, spoiler alert, I was not a dinosaur kid. I never was. I never will be. Like, it's just the way that it is. Most people I knew were like, had some level of like either a heightened interest or like sliding up the scale to obsession, and I just like, for whatever reason, obviously I've talked about it, so I was that weird fucking kid. I'm that weird adult. Like, I just could not give a fuck. Everybody else was like, every year it was like the dinosaur module or whatever, and everybody's like, yes, that was like their favorite like 2 weeks of the year or whatever, and I'm just like, when can we read Bridge to Terabithia so I can cry again? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, I like, to me it was like fun popcorn, like, it was a good like movie to watch when you're a kid, like, but I don't really like remember exactly when it was. It was just like something I saw at like a sleepover sometime, and I was like, oh, this is good. I never like rewatched it all the time, but it was just sort of one of those movies that like, oh yeah, I liked it, and like if I went over to somebody's house and they were watching it, I'd like sit down and be like, oh yeah, I remember this, and I love Laura Dern, etc. What about you, Ro? By the way, yes, that was me even at like a very young age, was like, ooh, Laura Dern.
Yeah, so I mean, I pretty vividly remember seeing this in the theater when it came out. I would have been like,
oh man,
5 or 6.
Yeah,
I would have been 5 or 6. I saw it in the Kenful Theater before, the Cineplexes and all the chains. I don't even remember, like, I feel like it was called like Paramount Theater, the one where I lived, and like, not because of Paramount, that's just what they were called.
Okay.
And it was like, just old school, like one screen. I went and saw this.
One movie per week.
Yeah. I went and saw this, and as a kid, I was fucking pumped. I was also a dinosaur kid. I always was in the dinosaurs. Had this on VHS. I feel like this and Independence Day are like the ultimate VHS movies that just like Christmas were gifted to everyone. Like, I had an uncle that I'm pretty sure he gifted us this, and everyone in the family got copies of Jurassic Park. The same as he also gifted everyone copies of Independence Day.
Okay, here's my question for fellow olds. Was that one of those VHSs that they used to sell for like $5 at McDonald's? Because remember there was like 10 VHSs for like years that you could get for like $5.
I feel like this
I feel like it probably was.
You could get it easily with promotionally somehow. But yeah, oddly enough, I'm trying to think. I'm going through my lifetime. I don't think I ever owned it on DVD. And then I owned it pretty late to the game. Like, I think I only bought the Blu-ray maybe like 5-6 years ago. And I just found it like in a pawn shop. Yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, like $5 Jurassic Park. Because it's one of those movies, like, I've seen, like Colton, I've seen this movie like hundreds of times. Like, sleepovers and birthday parties. And, like, I remember everybody having to have, like, a dinosaur birthday party that's, like, Jurassic Park themed. And, you know, we all got suckered to go see Jurassic Park 2 in the theater and Jurassic Park 3 in the theater. And if you're going to see 2, you got to rewatch 1. And it's just the ongoing cycle. Although, as I say that, like, I haven't seen any of the new ones. I haven't seen any of the Chris Pratt ones. I do plan on watching them because I do want to go see the newest one with the return of Sam Neill and everybody.
I heard Return of Laura Dern, but go ahead.
And I feel not the return. Like, has Jeff been in any of the newer ones?
Yeah, he had a cameo at the end, I think, of Fallen Kingdom, which is the second Jurassic World movie.
Oh, okay.
And
I was
that
gonna
one's
say,
like
because he was in all the, like, he was in, like, 2 and 3 of the originals, too, like...
He was in 2, I don't know about 3, because Sam Neill is the main character in 3, and Laura Dern also comes back for a cameo in that movie.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie.
So yeah, I'm not sure, but... Yeah,
2 and
it's 3
I saw once in the theater. I don't think I ever watched them again.
Yeah, I think all 3 of them are back for Dominion, which comes out in like a, when this comes out, like in a week's time, right? So.
Interesting. Now, I made the joke earlier about this kind of being, I said it was an indie film, but I don't want to fool people that this, I was looking at like how much money this movie made, and it was embarrassing how small this movie was. On a $63 million budget, it only made $1 billion. So
only,
pretty
flop. Jurassic Park started its life in its flop era,
just a flop,
and has never recovered from it.
I was wondering to myself, maybe could Spielberg get some tips from the guy that made Troll 2? Maybe, come back, try to do it all over again successfully? Should the dinosaurs be scared of meat sandwiches?
Well, see, here's the thing. They should have just got in touch with the person that directed Tammy and the T-Rex. That's what I think.
Dude,
and gotten Denise
we
Richards
should do that
to
sometime too.
We should actually. That's a very good
the
idea.
gore cut for that is actually pretty awesome. But
slotting that on my list right now. Actually,
yes,
I'm going to be changing my picks.
Nobody write and say you enjoy this episode, because Colton's going to somehow con this whole podcast to go like an entire year of only dinosaur picks.
Yeah, I was gonna say we just for a peek behind the curtain, we just kind of chose some of our picks upcoming. I don't know, I might have to go back and rewrite them now. Think of some other dinosaur movies to choose. You might have 4 or 5 Colton picks of just dinosaur picks coming up soon.
It's all about I'm a Carnosaurus man. I definitely had that on DVD.
That sounds like a porn, bro. What? That's not a real thing.
It's a real thing.
That's a pornography.
It's super low budget, and I'm pissed I don't own it, because I was actually looking. Apparently that DVD is worth like $1,000 because they only made like a really small amount of them, and I bought it in like a Zeller's bargain bin.
Going back to the intro, I should have been Carnosaurus Colton for the alliteration. But anyways, we're past that now.
We're past that. You missed your opportunity.
Yes.
All right, so we're making jokes. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of it. And you know where we're starting with what question. It is, what was your favorite dinosaur as a kid?
Oh, geez. Easy. It's the T-Rex by far,
Ooh.
Always been my favorite dinosaur, specifically the Jurassic Park version, which I understand that, they have feathers or down or whatnot, The Jurassic Park one doesn't look what a T-Rex would look like, but you know, I used to draw all the time up until I was probably 12 or 13, and no joke, like when I was age 4 through probably 8, all I would draw is like T-Rexes and Stegosauruses and Triceratops, just dinosaurs all the time. So yeah, I'd say T-Rex was my favorite. I don't know if Mike has a favorite dinosaur. He looks confused by the question. I don't know.
I'm like, wasn't there some kind of like SpaghettiOs that were in the shape of dinosaurs? Like that might be it for me. Like I don't know. I don't have a fucking clue.
Mike's favorite dinosaur is SpaghettiO dinosaurs.
I like the one with the spiny things on its back, I guess. That was kind of cool. And like the weird spiky tail.
Okay. Yes, that'd be probably the Stegosaurus. Yeah, you're probably going for
Stegosaurus, that's the one. That's it. That's if I had to choose one, I guess, because I love a good like flail, and its tail was like a flail.
Yeah, I thought you were going with the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3 for a second, and I was about to fight you, considering I chose the T-Rex. But anyways, that's for Jurassic Park.
No, we don't have to fight. I have no horse in this race. I have no dinosaur in this race, so it's fine.
What about you, Rowan?
We're not going to fight today.
I'm going to raise you, I see your Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'm going to raise you, obviously, Velociraptor.
Yeah.
I came out of this movie. I don't know how you don't come out of this movie and you're like, Velociraptor's the baddest fucking dinosaur of all time. Even though now...
Was that real, though? Was that something they made up for this?
Well, now that we're adults, we know that Velociraptors were absolutely nothing like that. I remember,
yeah, that's what I thought.
I remember that ruining my childhood when I found that out. Like, I think, they were, like, small. Like, really small. And they also, they had feathers and shit. And...
Yeah, so just in that documentary I just watched, you know, they had a whole section on Velociraptors, and they are far less intimidating. They're like small turkeys, and they have big feathered tails, and they're all feathery. You know, they're still smart, and they still like hunt in like little groups, like packs of 2 or 3. But it's literally like killer turkeys, right? Like they're trying to three of them trying to take down like a pterodactyl, right? Like a baby pterodactyl, right? They're definitely you know, it's not the same thing.
Oh my god, I'm thinking of like one of my coworkers is like starting a chicken coop in her backyard, and 3 of her chickens got in fights and were like bloody and like were pecking chunks out of each other's faces. So now I'm just picturing like fucking velociraptors as her chickens just going at each other in a coop in the backyard. It's ridiculous. I love it. I'm obsessed.
Yeah, I think some people view it as like a mistake in the movie because it's based off of like it's a cousin of the velociraptor called the Deinonychus, I think.
Yeah,
and it's just the Velociraptor is just a cooler name, I think. So
it's
I think
a way cooler name.
I think Crichton went with Velociraptor instead of Deinonychus or whatever, and like that was obviously what they were basing the look of the Velociraptors in the movie off of. But yeah, if you know, for the paleontologists out there, you know, they'll be laughing along with the killer turkeys, I suppose.
I feel like Michael Crichton just really didn't give a shit anyway. I was reading that apparently he was like criticized because I think it's the Tyrannosaurus Rex is like actually not from like the Jurassic period, and basically he always got questioned on that, and he was just kind of like, I don't know, man. Like,
as if
I've written 75 books. Why are you hung up on this one detail?
He was like, it looked cool. It just looked cool. That's why I did it.
Well, you were kind of saying, how could anyone not come out of Jurassic Park and love the Velociraptors? And I kind of agree with you, but as a kid, I was like afraid of the Velociraptors, right? And then the ending, the T-Rex is like the hero, right? Like he comes in and he fights off the 2 or 3 Velociraptors, and our heroes escape, right? So the T-Rex to me was like the hero of the movie, right? So that's why I love the heroes, not the villains, especially when I was a kid. So
all right, so let's get into the real first question. Our favorite scene. We know it's coming, and I'm very interested in people's answers in this. And I'm weaving. I'm going to go to Mike because Mike doesn't sound so hot on the scenes that make a movie called Jurassic Park. So what's your favorite scene?
Okay, honestly, it's a weird choice, I think, maybe, potentially, but it's the one when, do not ask me to remember their character names, because I do not, they're just, like, Sam and Laura, but, like, when Samuel and Laura Dern first arrive at the island, and Colonel Sanders is taking them on the tour of, when they get in, and it's almost like an amusement park ride, and, like, it's taking them through, and, they're like, oh my god, like, are they they thought they were like animatronic people and stuff, and like that whole sequence, and then they like get to see the egg hatch and everything, like that whole like 5 minutes. I really like that part because to me it encapsulates like everything that they want you to feel about the movie and about like dinosaurs and stuff. And it's this like kind of childlike wonder, and it's like, because they're shown at the beginning to be these like out in the field, like getting dirty, like experienced, like doing archaeology and all that. And then, they come and they're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? It's just so like wonderful. And, it's like going to an amusement park for the first time in your life, and this like, oh, it's like a spectacle. And, they're like so jaded and like know everything and they're experts in their field, but they're like, this is supposed to be so spectacular that like even they're wowed by it. And I feel like obviously part of it is that they are wonderful actors and very charming and stuff, but like I just think it's a really well done scene because it really does convey that sense of like absolute like awe and wonder and like this is life changing. And you're kind of like, this is your opportunity to like experience history like you literally never have been able to and you've always wanted to. And I feel like it wasn't exactly the same for me, but like a lot of people who like would watch that and were like loved dinosaurs and stuff, it's like that was probably their first time on the like to see this like really realistic like CG and stuff. And I feel like just that whole like mirroring, they were like kind of the everyman for like the audience, and I just thought that was really well done, that like kind of stand in like, oh my God, like shock and awe. And I just thought it was a really nice scene, and it kind of set up a like really nice tone for the movie. I don't know why, like that just really like I love that scene, and I think
really that's a great pick. Yeah, you like explained perfectly why it's a great scene as well. Like loads of people love that scene.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and like I said, like a part of it is obviously you have these amazing actors who like have this really charisma and just it's like this effortless like just wonder and amazement, and I just love it. And like to me that's what that movie is about, and like a lot of Steven Spielberg movies are about is that like amazement at the fantastical.
100%.
Yeah. So what about you guys?
Yeah, for me, mine's not quite as deep. I'm definitely gonna just go with the T-Rex paddock escape, which obviously, we were kind of talking off mic that the first hour of this movie is a little bit slower than I remember, and I think it's always just because I'm so excited to get to the dinosaurs. Like even as a kid, I probably watched that, like I said, 100 times the first hour, but it's just by the time the dinosaurs come out, I forget that we had to experience an hour of the movie to get to this part, right? It's just I'm so wowed by when the T-Rex comes out. Specifically, I love when he's like or she's because it's female dinosaurs, when she's like assaulting the it's not a Jeep Wrangler, it's something else, Explorer or something, but when it's assaulting the vehicle with the kids in it, and they got like the night vision goggles on, and she like puts the flashlight onto its eye, and the eye actually contracts when the light gets in it, and then they starts coming in through the glass roof. Like it still wows me, even like knowing more about filmmaking, but just literally, oh my God, these kids are in this vehicle, it's getting flipped around, it's a huge ass animatronic that is like constantly malfunctioning in the rain, and they're trying to dry it off because it's like too heavy, it's like falling apart. Then you got the whole thing flipping over and sinking into the mud. It's just like absolutely horrific. And then as a kid, when I was watching it too, like obviously being a kid thinking you're like getting assaulted by this T-Rex, right? It's just terrifying. And then there's also like the ripple effects in the water. It's like absolutely iconic, right? Like it took them, I think it's really silly, but I think it took them like a couple of weeks to figure out how to get the actual effect they wanted. And they had to put like an acoustic guitar below the dash and strum the strings in order to get the perfect,
oh my God,
like circular ripple that they wanted. It's so weird, and there's an attention to detail in the scene, but like it just builds up, like the tension just keeps building up more and more, and I mean the goat leg, right, like flying onto the vehicle as a crazy jump scare.
That like kind of even the sound and everything of that when it like splatters down on the windshield, it's like oof.
It's like the moment in the movie where it's like it kind of goes from what Mike was talking about, like this feeling of amazement and wonder, and it's like, oh no, like this is actually gonna be scary, it's gonna be horrific a little bit, right? It changes completely, right? And
it takes that distance away, right? Like you're like there, and it's like fuck, these are predators, you know what I mean? Like
I absolutely love that scene. I mean, obviously it has some iconic stuff in it for sure, but just as a whole, like yes, of course that's my favorite scene. What about you, Rowan?
So I gotta go with my boys, The Velociraptors in the kitchen. Also, iconic scene.
My second
you
favorite
would go
scene
with
for
turkeys.
sure.
I loved it.
Fucking Rowan and his turkeys.
I love that we have to stretch our imagination that not only are these dinosaurs, like newly birthed, but they've also very quickly learned how to open heavy-duty metal doors pretty much perfectly.
Oh my god, that brilliant cut where they're like, unless they've learned how to open doors, then it literally just cuts to, like, them opening the door handle. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ.
It's a little clumsily open doors, to be fair, and they're not doorknobs. They are the handles, which is easy.
I know, it's the handle, which I was like, if that was a doorknob, that thing would never get it open. I was watching that today, and I was like, no, please.
Yeah, that'd be
they
it.
wouldn't have that. Yeah.
Well, and I liked it because I was thinking about the editing and, the transition when they do that. But I was like, how effective, like, for the audience of this movie, like, for kids? Because just that sloppy transition right into the door opening, like, as a kid, you're like, holy fuck, like, it's going down. But yeah, I love that scene. Kind of like how I think you feel about the T-Rex scene. This to me is like the most horror scene in this movie. This is where we're like, we're in Halloween. We're in like Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it's like a slasher chase scene.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think the T-Rex scene is when the movie starts to shift. The Velociraptors are the horrifying presence of the movie, to be clear. Yeah.
100%. And I love that slasher cat and mouse game, like we're playing in the kitchen. And I like how Spielberg also really made sure, like, in all the scenes, really, but I felt in this scene, like, it would have been so easy to make the dinosaurs dumb in situations and just be like, oh, these, like, animals, but, like, how intelligent they are, which also, like, gives it this very, interesting way that as an audience we can, like, we really, like, respect them as animals, and we're like, oh, these things aren't just, animals that, died off because they're stupid. Like, these were pretty advanced animals, and, like, any kind of, like, predator that survives in the wilderness. And yeah, like, I think everything about it, like, how we learn how they, like, communicate, and they kind of have, like, this pattern of, like, spreading out, and it just, it adds, with the kids, it just adds this horrifying slasher feature, and I absolutely, I adore that scene.
Oh man, and we can't leave that scene without talking about, like, Lex in the drawer and the reflection shot, like, because you were kind of talking about, like, how intelligent the raptors are, and obviously that's, like, a silly scene. They run into the reflection, but, like, the way that Spielberg films it, it's like he fools us as well, right? Like, we think that it's running directly for her, but then it bangs into, like, the cabinets across the way. Just like an absolutely iconic shot of her trying to pull it down to, to protect herself. It's, that sequence is awesome as well, obviously. My earliest memory ever, right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
I never realized Ariana Richards, big part of Rowan's childhood, with playing Lexi in Jurassic Park and in Space Invaders, which was another Rowan childhood classic.
Wow.
And if you're listening to this, you're like, what the fuck, Space Invaders? Just go watch it. It's awesome. It's about aliens that are basically surfer bros.
Or maybe just don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not as good as I'm remembering it, but...
Is anything ever as good as you remember? Just, like, let's be honest here. Is anything ever as good as you remember it? Never.
So instead of leaving this for like, towards the end, I want to talk about the score now.
Go for it, yeah.
The score stuck in my head, guys. And, like, I totally went in like, oh, yeah, I remember the score, I remember the song, like, yeah, it was cool. And then, like, I've just been saying it in my head all day since I watched this last night.
Well, before we went live, I said if you're going to be shitting on the movie, I'm going to out you for humming the score, like, as we were getting set up and kind of vamping on the mic. So, thankfully, you're not shitting on it yet, at least. But, no, I mean, the score is, I mean, it literally is iconic, right? Like, John Williams somehow wrote, like, love songs about, like, a brachiosaurus and made it, like, the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful pieces of music, especially in, like, a Spielberg film, but maybe in, like, almost any, movie, right? Like, the score is insane in this movie. And you haven't watched Jurassic World, but when I watch that movie, they bring back pieces of the score and, like, reprise it, and I think it's, I forget the composer, but it's not John Williams for the new ones. And when he brings them back, like, it makes me emotional, like, when they're used in that movie, because I'm just remembering back to, like, this movie, right, and how pitch perfect it all is. But yeah, the score is insane.
Yeah, the score is fantastic. And one thing I wanted to talk about with the score, so I'm willing to admit we're not the first horror podcast to talk about Jurassic Park. I think almost everyone I listen to has done a Jurassic Park episode. And, you know, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about because I find a common theme, you know, when debating the horror of Jurassic Park is a lot of people go to the score as one of the knocks against it not being a horror film.
Yeah.
And saying that the score is specifically what makes it an action adventure film because of kind of the upbeatness of the score. And I was just curious what you guys thought about that.
It is very much like when I was rewatching it for this, I was like, and this is not a knock, I'm not dragging it, but it's very much like your prototypical, and, you know, this was obviously maybe one that sort of spawned many imitators, obviously, but, like, it was definitely, like, the, like, kind of blockbuster action, but, like well done score of that time. And I feel like it's so influential that it's hard to, like, divorce it from that sort of genre that it influenced. But I don't really see how that would not make it horror. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I'd kind of
like, I get it. It is, like I said, like, it's very much a, like, adventure blockbuster, like, score kind of in your head. Like, you could take that and transpose it onto another movie and it would probably, you know, of that genre, and it would still work. But, like, that to me doesn't detract from the terror of a lot of it, you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm kind of like saying what we've already kind of discussed, where a lot of the score is very big and bombastic and airy, and you're, you know, very like whimsical and magical is what it's going for. But I can think of pieces of music in my head where I think it has changed to try and be at least maybe not explicitly horror, but definitely it's supposed to be tense. Like, I'm thinking about when Tim is up on, you know, the fence and it's counting down the time, and you got Ellie down turning the power back on, and as soon as she turns the power back on and Tim gets blown off the fence, she kind of backs into a chain link fence, and that is the first reveal, like, of the raptor. And it's very much like the monster is coming out of the shadows, right? And it kind of, the claws come through the chain link fence and kind of grab her, and she starts screaming, and she immediately backs into, like, the severed arm of Samuel L. Jackson's character, like Arnold, like, resting on her. And, like, the score at that moment is very much not, like, fun and whimsical. It's very much it's going for tension. Maybe not explicitly like the Psycho, you know, screeches in the shower, you know, violin squeals, but it's definitely like the tone of it has very much changed. I think it's mostly when the raptor's around, I can kind of think of the score changing for sure, other than right at the end.
But I mean, it makes sense because the tone of the movie shifts several times anyway, right?
Yeah.
So of course the score is going to shift with it. Like, that's just...
Yeah, that's why I don't, you know, once again, I mean, it's kind of hard to discuss this without kind of discussing explicitly if the movie's like a horror movie anyways. But
I mean, let's just get into it.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd explicitly call it a horror movie, but it's also like I watched this thing when I was all the time as a kid. And as a kid growing up, I wasn't really allowed to watch horror movies that had like people killing people, really. Like, I wasn't able to watch like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street and whatnot growing up.
You weren't like me and cut loose in the video store and watching whatever gore fest you wanted.
No, but I was always allowed to watch, for whatever reason, animal on people violence. And I feel like it's just because I feel like it's realistic, like it could happen in the wild. It's almost like a cautionary tale. So Jurassic Park slid in.
Don't wander too far in the woods.
Exactly, right? And I grew up in Labrador, you know. I've come, you know, toe to toe with wildlife before. So, you know, this was very much almost like a cautionary tale, even though I'd never, you know, see a T-Rex in the wild. But for me, like, the movie has horror trappings. That's the thing. Like, literally the opening scene of the movie, like, what is it supposed to evoke? It's the whole scene where they're trying to load the raptor into the enclosure, and it gets a grab of the guy, and he's, like, getting whipped around, you know, up and down, and we're only seeing, like, shots through, like, the grates of, like, a monster, you know, quote-unquote's eye, you know, the sharp claws, the teeth. Like, it's supposed to be evoking terror and horror for sure. Now, that's the only scene like that for another hour after that, but that is, you know, that is the purpose of the scene, right? Is to set up a monster, to set up a horrific presence that eventually will come back in the movie. Plus, this movie is rated PG-13 only for intense science fiction terror, which I don't even know if I've seen on like another movie, but it's just like, yeah, there's basically nothing in it that should warrant a higher rating, but like we can't give this a PG just because it's too scary. So, you know, I don't know. I have a lot more to say on that, but like, what do you guys think? Is there horror elements in this at all? Or
I agree, and especially like, I mean, and again, this is not a slam of any adults who still thoroughly enjoy it, but like, you know, when you think about it, it's kind of like a gateway movie for kids. You know what I mean? Like it's a stepping stone where it's like, even in the plot, you know, it kind of like builds to that terror in a way, and it's kind of like a good sort of like gateway to maybe like slightly more intense like adventure movies and stuff like that. What, because it takes, you know, this like, oh, dinosaurs, you love dinosaurs, except it's not, you know, Land Before Time or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it is, and when you think about it, like, put it next to something like that, it's absolutely horrific, and it does that, but it does it in a like very, it takes more of a like, I want to say like Hitchcockian approach to it, in that, because you brought up Psycho. And that's a movie where no violence really, like, explicitly happens on screen. You know, I mean, there's the stabbing, but it doesn't actually show it, you know, because of the cuts and everything. And I feel like they're taking that same, like, it's a lot of, like, suspense and things kind of happening that you don't see. Like, one moment that, like, really drove it home to me as, like, they're really trying to, like, drive home this terror and suspense and violence without actually showing anything, so it's not too damaging to a child's psyche, is near the beginning when they're lowering the cow into the velociraptors, and like the thing comes up and it's shredded, but like there's no blood or anything on it at all. Like it's just this shredded up like harness or whatever, and I'm like, that thing should be like covered, there should be guts and shit and bones hanging off of that. You know what I mean? And I was like, so that was sort of my first indication that, yeah, you know what, they're not clearly not going for like, oh, we want this to be as like hyper realistic as possible. Like they're taking this and going, here's this thing that you love and that you're really into, and you know, we're gonna like ratchet it up a few notches so that it is actually frightening.
Yeah.
So to me, like it's gateway horror, I'm gonna call it. Like I totally get it. I know most people wouldn't call it a horror, but it's like an adventure and an adventure movie that like turns into like horror. It's all wrapped up in one.
Yeah, I mean, even that scene that you're specifically mentioning, I think the line that precedes it is "You bred raptors," and it's a hard cut to the raptor vocalization, like the squealing noise, which is meant to be like a jump scare to start that scene when you're like off on, you know, you're just kind of off put a little bit, but it's broad daylight, you know, all of your heroes are like overlooking an enclosure that's heavily encased in, but it's still meant to kind of, you know, make you jump, like if it's your first time seeing the movie.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, so when I watched it yesterday, like, I had totally forgotten about the whole first scene with, you know, the employee.
Shoot her.
Because I came in this and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try like my damnedest to be an asshole and be able to argue this isn't a horror movie. But like you said, like, I think it sets it up right there. I think Steven Spielberg is a very smart guy. I think, you know, in order for this to sell on your Happy Meals and, you know, make $1 billion, this needs to be a quote unquote like action adventure. But I mean, this guy, you know, we're talking about Steven Spielberg. We're talking about Jaws. This is Jaws.
Yeah, he puts stakes in there. There's stakes, right?
Yes,
like,
for sure.
There's danger.
He knows what he's doing. That's where, I guess, like you said, Mike, my thing comes about the gateway horror, like a kid's horror movie. To me, you know, this is like the same way that I kind of, you know, I look at like, oh, well, you know, something like Scooby-Doo or something is this entryway into horror because of, you know, it's got those elements of ghosts and monsters and all this kind of stuff. I mean, this even more so. Like I said, like, I don't understand what would make this different from Jaws or Lake Placid or Anaconda or like...
Or Creature from the Black Lagoon. And it's a Universal movie.
Yeah.
So it kind of has that legacy of, like, like tame horror. And again, that's not a drag. Like,
no,
you know.
I just think this is a subgenre that, you know, is like super popular. Like, this is, you know, this animal / like, you know, mutated animal monster horror, which I know, like, when I was watching some of the featurettes and stuff, like, you know, like I said, he's smart, so Steven Spielberg gave his whole thing about, like, oh, I made sure this isn't a monster movie, and, like, this isn't a horror movie, and I don't want it to be looked at like a 1950s drive-in monster dinosaur movie. But I'm like,
even though that's exactly what it is.
It's like, that's exactly what it is, because you definitely, like, want to watch this on a big screen. And, you know, secrets revealed. I've seen this movie, like, multiple times, and multiple times in my life on the big screen. Whenever it plays, I go and see it.
Yeah, but it's meant for the big screen. And, like, yes, I mean, I once again, I picked this for a horror podcast, so obviously I do believe there's horror elements, and I think calling it a monster movie is very fitting for large swaths of the movie. You know, there's also parts of the movie where it just has to rely on the characters, or you caring about the characters, or watching Dennis Nedry run around with his Barbasol can full of embryos and getting attacked by a Dilophosaurus, which, once again, like, that's another horror sequence 100%, like when he's in the mud trying to get the vehicle tied up, trying to wrench it out, and then it literally, I mean, how many people watching this movie knew what a Dilophosaurus was and knew that it had a frilled base around its neck and could spit acid and shit? Nobody knew that. Like, that's obviously meant to be a jump scare. And then even when he gets back in his vehicle, it comes in through the passenger side and kills him, right? Like, you know, that's very much meant to be horrifying, right? Like, that's the whole point of that sequence. I think, like, just calling it like a monster movie is dismissive, but I mean, like, it is a monster movie, you know, in its DNA as well, right? So
yeah, you can't, I guess the point is you can't deny that, right? Like, it's
it's an aspect of it for sure. you know, I mean, obviously Spielberg knew what he was doing, though. I mean, he has 2 kids as not the protagonists, but they're certainly in the group. And I mean, there's even signs when they're in, like, the visitor center with all the toys, you know, all the shirts. And I look and I go, like, oh my God, I think I had those pajamas as a kid. And, you know, I remember having the bedspread.
The
lunchbox, you know, it's very much like, you know, they had that all made up for the movie, but I'm sure they also knew that there's a good chance that this is going to be a phenomenon, right? Like, there's a good chance that we will grab a bunch of kids, right? Like, this is the guy who made E.T., right? Like, so there was a very good chance that it was gonna be big, right, with children as well. So yeah, he, like, pushed it probably as far as he could push it, probably aiming for a PG rating, just purely PG, and then got bumped to PG-13, I would assume,
for that terrifying sci-fi.
Exactly.
So I was gonna say, maybe is this the appropriate time to talk about, you know, I think you asked people, is it horror?
Yeah, go for it, get into it. Yeah, bring up what people said. I think people did kind of agree on it afterwards, right?
Yeah, I feel like it was we had a percentage that said it was horror. It was in our favor.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a landslide, but, you know, there were enough people there that believed that it was a horror movie. And there was also another podcast that we follow. What's the name of the podcast? I don't want to mix it up with the other one.
Yeah, because we did have a lot of this. A podcast on Elm Street.
There you go. Yeah, they just recently did an episode as well, which I haven't had the chance to listen to, but obviously they're another horror podcast that just covered it, and I'm sure they're covering it for very much the same reason that I kind of thought this would be a good time to choose it, just because the new one's coming out, you know? So I was like, well, let's see what Mike and Rowan feel about Jurassic Park, and let's see how much they rip apart another movie that I love. But, you know, it hasn't been too painful this time, at least, so that's good.
No, not at all. I do want to briefly say that whenever I think about Jurassic Park, I also hand in hand think about Weird Al. So I immediately after, you know, last night had to go on YouTube and listen to Weird Al song Jurassic Park.
It's frightening in the dark.
It's frightening in the dark. The animals are running wild. Great claymation video.
Yeah.
I think I got that cassette tape when I was a kid. So it was definitely my Jurassic Park phase. So it's just, yeah, like Jurassic Park, it just imprinted, I feel, on like a whole generation of, not just like on the kids, but on the culture. I mean, anybody wanted to make a movie like Jurassic Park, and I don't think anyone succeeded.
No, well, that's the thing too. It's like they're so big at the box office, and I know that you kind of selected and said there are like other dinosaur movies, you know, that I could choose, but like, you know, how many superhero movies do we get? How many like Mission Impossible style Fast and Furious movies do we get? It's like there pretty much is only one franchise that's doing dinosaurs, right, in like live action. And I don't even think it's like a cost thing. I think it's just like a how do we make it make sense, you know, even like a little bit.
I feel
right?
like part of that was that they actually, you know, had that literary material to work with, which gave it like a little bit of meat, you know what I mean? Which is more than... I think if they had just said, let's write a dinosaur movie, it probably wouldn't have been as good. But like they had something that, you know, like had that kind of a little bit of extra heft to it, and they're like, now let's take this and make it into a Spielbergian experience that is also a universal experience. And we can clearly, like you said, they knew it was going to be a hit with the kids, and they knew this is probably going to end up in Universal, and this movie about a park is going to become a park or become part of a park, you know what I mean? And it's, you know, obviously there's a very, very small part of me that's, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool cynic, and I'm like watching it and going, anyway, and I can see it, and I know, like, I can see the, like, marketing and stuff happening, but, like, also, it's to the movie's credit that didn't overtake me, because, like, sometimes I'll watch it, and that's all I can see, and it just ruins it, but, like, again, I think it's because they had that, like, pre-existing, like, they took the story and adapted it, and I think that really gave it something special, because I feel like there's not even, but even like, I mean, listen, I'm talking about somebody who like has multiple degrees in literature and deals with books for a living. There's not that many dinosaur books in terms of like fiction and stories still to this day. And again, because I'm sure there were definitely some few attempts after like the success of the book and the movie, but like it's just not there. It was lightning in a bottle. Michael Crichton, Steven Spielberg, I feel like that was it. And you have that story and you have that setup, and like everything can spin off of that, but you can't you can't copy it, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's uncopyable.
Yeah, as soon as you leave like the kids section in the bookstore, it's like you won't see basically any dinosaur books anymore unless you like wander over into like the natural history part. You might get some, you know, picture books or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then in terms of like the themes and stuff, like the movie is very commercial, but at least the movie also kind of acknowledges it, and it is set in what is supposed to be eventually like a theme park attraction, right? So it's like
it's built into it. It's like baked in that like this is a capitalist enterprise.
Yeah, it's like if you take a shot every single time John Williams says, you know, we spared no expense, you'll be absolutely plastered by the end of the movie, right? Like he's literally saying like we spared no expense, not only in the park but like in this movie. Like this is an experience. Like I love the scene you selected, Mike, because like you said, it is very much just mirroring the movie, right? Like they are explaining to us how they made dinosaurs in the reality of the movie, but also we are on this, you know, theme park ride watching this movie, right? Like it's the whole thing. Like we're supposed to feel the magic of the dinosaurs, right? Like, you know, when Dr. Grant is like trying to get his glasses off his face as he's like falling out of the Jeep Wrangler, you know, and he sees like the big Brachiosaurus, like, you know, it is like literally a moment that I think most people like point to in like all of film as like a magical moment, right? Like, and like obviously when something's like that influential, like it's gonna be a major box office success. It's gonna make shitloads of money, right? But
I also like to imagine when you know Universal's like, yeah, we're gonna do this. I like envisioning that, because, you know, if you've been to like Universal Studios, the theme park, it's like right next to Disney, and I just like that this is kind of, you know, them throwing the first shot at Disney. Because Michael Crichton has talked about in a lot of interviews, like when he wrote the book, his idea was that John Hammond is like evil. He's like a dark Walt Disney, and that's kind of the whole idea. So I do like to think about this little beef where Universal's like, we're making this movie, and it's basically about Walt Disney, and fuck them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that would have been even more in the movie and more explicit if it wasn't played by Richard Attenborough, because he is playing it with such like an optimistic vibe. Like he doesn't seem like capitalistic in the movie, right? He's saying a spared no expense because, you know, when people are remarking at it, he's like proud of what he achieved, right? It's not kind of like a bragging way all the time, right?
Yeah.
Now, which you guys, I assume, haven't seen Jurassic World. What I'd say is the people that wind up running those parks, they're much more like capitalistic. They're much more like what we know about Walt Disney, where it's like, you know, we are profiting off of nostalgia and profiting off of, you know, magic, essentially, right? But yeah. no, it's a great performance, and yeah, I definitely can see the comparison there.
I'm curious too how you guys felt about like the CGI holding up, and with the practical and the CGI, and you know they also used a little bit of stop motion work in this as well. Yeah, I was just curious about your viewing experience on it this time and how you felt that held up.
Yeah, we were kind of discussing a little bit off air that your Blu-ray transfer wasn't very good or was too clean or something like that. I watched like a more expensive version. I watched like the Ultimate Trilogy version or whatever. But what I will say is that I don't know if the CGI completely holds up to modern standards, but what I'd say is there's still loads of modern movies that come out that visually at times look worse than Jurassic Park by like a long shot.
Yeah.
The practical effects on the T-Rex, when it is practical, I do believe it's basically seamless. In the scene at night with the rain and like, you know, when the eye is down next to the vehicle, like I think that is seamless. It looks completely real, right? And it's a huge practical effect. When it's chasing the Jeep later on, you know, in the rain and it's all moving pretty fast, I would say yes, it's no longer, you know, an excellent, it's not perfection, but it's still great. The only scene that really shows his age to me every single time I see it is when they show the T-Rex in broad daylight and it's, you know, eating a Gallimimus, and then there's the herd of Gallimimus running and they're, you know, trying to act to them jumping over the log next to them, right? Which, if I remember correctly, that was the scene that they first did to kind of prove that they can do CGI. And like, because Spielberg was very skeptical, like he said, he wanted to do like everything stop motion if they had to, and then practical effects for everything else. But that was the first scene they showed him. And I think it was the sheer number of Gallimimus on screen at once, or maybe it was the way the T-Rex moved, that he's like, I can't do that in a practical effect. But I do think that's the one scene that definitely kind of shows its age a little bit. But I mean, the rest of it, I mean, I'm never taken out of it. Like, when I'm noticing it, I'm watching for it, is what I'll say. What about you guys?
No, it honestly holds up much better than I thought it would, because like I said, I haven't been watching it 80 million times. So it has definitely been quite a few years since I watched it, and I was expecting to watch it and, you know, kind of like cringe. But again, I think it was because it was decently done CGI mixed with the practical that, like you said, it didn't take me out of it at all. Obviously there were a couple moments, but I'm just thinking of another Sam Neill movie we did, because of course this apparently is just the Sam Neill podcast, of something that I again hadn't watched in years but really enjoyed, like when we did Event Horizon, and rewatching that, and it was just, some of the effects were, the CGI was absolutely like just atrocious.
Yeah,
there was nothing in this, and I mean, obviously there was a difference between the budgets of those two movies, but like, still, the fact that like there was nothing in this movie that I laughed at because it was that bad. Like, there was stuff that it's like, oh, that's showing its age a little bit, but like, it was still all well done. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
Watch, you know, obviously you have to be like, yeah, like, you know, this was released in 93, so they're shooting this like 91, 92. And yeah, I mean, I'm just saying exactly what you guys are saying. Like, there's shit we see today that, you know, Morbius, that just is like, the CG's terrible in it. And like, a lot of the CG works in this. I agree. I think the only issues are like the day shots, which is really why, like, you know, even still now, like, a lot of action scenes these big movies use, like, tend to be at night or a darker setting, so you can hide some of that, some of those imperfections. But the practical stuff is mind-blowing. Like, you can tell when it's practical, and just the sheer size of it is impressive. Like, you know there's no tricks of the camera in a lot of this. Like, we know they built the T-Rex like that big, and his head is that big, or when his foot is like stomping into the mud, like, it's a giant set of legs they're using. Yeah, like, it's just, it looks awesome. It looks awesome. It holds up. You know, my mind was blown there because Mike brought up Event Horizon. I forgot we did Event Horizon. So three Sam...
Like literally a few months ago.
3 Sam Neill movies in this short of time.
Since I joined the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really,
to me, it was evidence of, there was a brief window of time. I feel like this was right before they started like pouring more and more money into like trying to push the effects and stuff, and like CG. And this was like a nice little window of time where they actually poured money into where it should have gone. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it was the money that they spent on this movie was spent in the right places.
Yeah.
And that's why it holds up. Like, I feel like right after this, then you started seeing them just throwing money at like, you know, cheap computer effects and stuff that are not going to hold up nearly as well. And I feel like this was like, whoever did the books on this and like budgeted was well done.
Yeah, like this is from the period where CGI was meant to augment the effect, not to be the entire
not
effect,
replacement.
right? Like,
yeah,
you know, there are scenes, like we said, like the Gallimimus scene or whatever, where, you know, it's a lot of CGI on screen. Like, even for modern standards, that would be a lot of CGI, like the amount of like creatures, you know, dinosaurs moving. But when it usually is just a CGI effect, it's like nighttime, it's obscured by rain, you know, sometimes it's shot through like a car window, sometimes it's shot, you know, framed differently. Like, basically Spielberg understood how to work within the restrictions of what they had. And the one thing, you know, that we keep mentioning, the T-Rex, you know, practical effect, the one thing he never thought about was that it was made out of foam and it was going to hold in all the water and essentially almost like ruin the movie about, you know, not factoring that in. But it was just basically like, we have to shoot this at nighttime where it's looking like wet, because it needs to look like, it can't look like foam. It has to look like, you know, scales. It has to look like skin, right? Like
slimy. And
I don't even understand. Like, I'm still amazed by it. Like, just from a filmmaking standpoint of like, I honestly don't even know how they thought about like, all right, when the light shines in, we're going to have the eyelid contract a little bit and the iris is going to pinpoint close. Like, I don't even understand like the mechanics behind that, right? And that's like, you know, they did it like basically before I was born, right?
Yeah,
it's just, it's insane. And then still like the big sick Triceratops, like, that's a huge practical effect that like looks very good. Like, some small like little nitpicks of like, oh, you know, the eye moves on like a timer or something. Like, yeah, if you're watching for it, you could probably see it, but like, it's basically seamless. And like, that's the thing with the new movies. Like, when you watch Jurassic World, like, I'm sure they have a budget of probably twice as much as this movie, but it doesn't look half as good, right? It's like, you got a movie, they probably got, you know, double if not triple or quadruple like the amount of VFX shots in it with double the budget, and it looks like garbage, right? Like, that's the thing. It's like, there's shots in this movie that I would put up to any modern day blockbuster and say like, this actually looks better, you know, and it's from the merging of practical and CGI.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, that's exactly how I felt when
I stole your words.
No, you just, I mean, I feel like most people that, you know, talk about this movie, that's what I can't imagine anyone that's like, oh, this looks like shit, you know, fuck Jurassic Park, bro. I will say, I kind of wish they had a close-up of Sam Neill's eye, because I wanted to see if his eyes were green in this. Maybe this isn't Sam Neill, it's his clone from Possession.
Oh, no. We almost made through the whole discussion without that movie.
Became an archaeologist.
Paleontologist?
Is it paleontologist? Wasn't he an archaeologist, though? Or is that like I don't know.
A paleontologist is for, like, I think specifically, like, you know, discovering dinosaur bones. But
okay,
I mean, I wanted to be one as a kid after seeing this movie, so, you know.
I don't know any of these jobs. Oh, yeah.
And every other youngster in an entire generation.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
Indiana Jones is an archaeologist, isn't he? Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was kind of funny when I was, like, briefly looking at facts and stuff that apparently, like, paleontology schools just said, like, all their admissions went up like tenfold after this movie came out, because everyone was
then all the dropouts after a year increased tenfold.
100%. I mean, it's a lot of just digging around in the dirt, right? Like, you're not discovering dinosaurs all the time. You might discover like one skeleton or full skeleton your whole career, right? It's not like the way the movie makes it out to be.
There's no velociraptors chasing you.
No, which of course that'd make it a little bit more interesting as well.
When I was a kid, I was like really a big fan of what was the Hunter, the Australian guy?
Are you talking about Crocodile Hunter? Steve Irwin?
No, like the actor's Bob Peck, but he plays Robert Muldoon.
Yes, yeah.
I was when I was a kid, he was like my favorite character in the whole film. I thought he was so badass. And I remember like when we were kids, like, you know, you go play with your friends and we'd all like play guns. We'd all have guns. And after you saw this movie, everyone wanted to be that guy.
Of course.
Because you're just like, oh, he's like so badass. He's just, even though, you know, he dies, you know.
Well, it's cool though, right? It's the hunter being out hunted, right? Is the whole thing, like, where he is aiming at one, has a clear shot, but then way earlier in the movie they talk about the flanking, right? And it's just like it comes out of like, you know, clever girl, right? And then it gets him, right? It's so good. It's almost like a mutual respect, right? Like that, you know, the hunter got out hunted. It's a great little moment.
I will say I'm more impressed that we've gone like an hour and a half and we haven't said anything about Jeff Goldblum yet, who I feel is like
a nutty performance in this movie. It's like a mixture of like trying to be sexy but also just weird. Like it's a performance, all right.
No, I mean, he was a thing before this, but like, this is really like what puts him at his peak, I would say. Would you guys like, this is like, I feel like this character, Jeff Goldblum just adopted this character in his real life. And this is like what he acts like all the time now.
From what I've seen from like recent interviews, he's a lot more like heightened than this character. He's not like as cool, but I would say like probably at this period of his life, I bet he was a lot like this character. Like it's Laura Dern like essentially fawning after him the entire movie, and Sam Neill trying to decide if he should be jealous or not. Like, you know, I mean, I was gonna say like him in the back of the Jeep with his chest hanging out, you know, and them all like working on him to like bring him back to health, and it's just like he's trying to be like so effortlessly cool and charming, you know, with the whole like chaos theory and the water droplet on the back of the hand, you know. It's all just I don't know. It's Ian Malcolm. I want to say it's cheesy, but like that's just literally the character. That's just what he is. He's like a perfect
Ian Malcolm, iconic character. I love this. I love this character. I always think it's kind of funny when you watch this to think that I feel like they essentially just recycled this character for Independence Day. It's like kind of the same thing, like a little less sexy, but they still try to do, you know, like, oh, it's Jeff Goldblum. He's an attractive guy. He's like nerdy, but cool and weird. And like I said, I feel like this pretty much, you know, he went for these roles like entirely after this movie where it's like, I'm just going to be Ian Malcolm all the time now.
Yeah, it's been ages since I've seen Independence Day, but I'll take your word for it.
It's 100%. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about? I mean, this is a huge movie.
Yeah, it's a huge movie, but I feel like we kind of touched on a lot of like my favorite things about it. I think it's very quaint how they handle technology in this movie, like with the you didn't say the magic word, you know, like the whole hack that happens, or Lex screaming when she gets into the vehicle. It's an interactive CD-ROM, you know, like that sort of shit is really fun. And I forgot how many times she drops throughout the movie that she's a hacker, which, like,
oh yeah,
when this movie was getting made in like 1991 or 1992, I'm surprised people even knew what a hacker was, right? So it was funny as a kid. I thought it came out of nowhere in the end when she's doing like, it's a Unix system and like hacking into, you know, to the door lock stuff. But I mean, it is set up in the movie. She does drop it 3 or 4 times, and you know, it's just probably like as a kid, I probably found Lex annoying or something. I don't know. But I think the tech in this movie is really cute. Like it's very quaint, like how they believe the park would run, right?
Oh yeah, it's super funny, like futurist, 90s futurist idea, you know. Yeah. That it would run. To me, it's always those things where like I always laugh. I think about like 2001 Space Odyssey or anything like that where, you know, they're referencing like these computer systems of the time, like, you know, people are living in space using like DOS, and you're like, yeah, these entire civilizations exist. And they're just using DOS. It's running the entire world.
Yeah, I got a couple other notes. Do you guys find Samuel L. Jackson looks older in this movie than he kind of does nowadays? Like, he's thin, but dude, he looks old. I don't know what it is in this movie, man.
Yeah, I feel like they aged him or something a bit. Like, he would have been, you know, like he would have been fairly young.
Yeah.
In this.
Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of him in Pulp Fiction like a year later. I mean, he doesn't look ancient. He looks like a dinosaur himself in this movie sometimes. So
I liked his role though. I thought he was pretty good in this.
Oh yeah, he's good. It's just
just a scene stealer, really.
Yeah, I mean the other thing I have that we never really mentioned is we never mentioned like right at the end, like kind of I don't know if I'd say it's the climax, but it's like the ending of the movie, right, where they're going into the vents. Like I think that's another really like good horror sequence where the raptor is kind of jumping up and they're dangling, and there's the shot of the one with all the DNA sequencing on the side of its head. Like it's just like an excellent shot. Like, yeah, oh man, I love that sequence, like going into like the fossil descent, like trying to climb down the skeletons to get the safety. It's so funny. It's like, it's hard for me to watch it now and kind of get like the emotion that the movie is wanting you to get, because we're supposed to feel like very fearful for this, like, you know, when it's hopping up through the vents and they're onto the skeletons, they start breaking apart, and you know the raptors are down below. But the entire time I'm just like, all right, here comes the T-Rex, you know, she's gonna be here any moment, you know. Like I'm just waiting for the grand reveal. Like I'm so excited. But
so my thoughts, you know, with the scene that you're talking about with the ceiling, I don't know why, but on this view, I was getting the James Cameron Aliens vibes. One of my favorite scene in Aliens is towards the climax of the movie. They're being bombarded by aliens, and the aliens are like in the ceiling. They're dropping out of the ceiling, and I just really got the feeling it's like a reverse effect where they're in the ceiling and like replace aliens with these velociraptors, and they're just like popping out into this, like into the ceiling tiles, which is like beat for beat what the aliens effect was. Okay. Where the aliens were just like dropping out of tiles, and it was giving, like, you're like, oh shit, like they're coming out of the ceiling, where this is, oh shit, they're coming into the ceiling. And it was just like, I don't know, like the way it was shot, the way I felt about it, I was just like, maybe a little nod. Like, I see you, James Cameron, because when I think of Steven Spielberg, like, I automatically think of James Cameron, and I like both kind of these epic movie directors that are known for like these like big budget, like action adventure. And yeah, I just, you know, it probably isn't actually tied in any way. I just like to imagine that it's a nod, like, I see you, what's up?
Yeah, I don't get it there, but the scene that I mentioned previously, where Ellie kind of backs into the fence, like, that does remind me of, like, I don't know why it reminded me of Xenomorph. I don't know if I can picture a scene in my head where, you know, the Xenomorph creeps behind someone like that, but it did remind me of, like, yeah, this is, like, the monster presence. There actually is an alien in this movie, too. There's a newspaper that I didn't understand. I've never noticed before. I don't know if either of you guys noticed it, but it's right in the beginning of the movie. There's a newspaper on the fridge that says "Space Aliens Stole My Face," and it's in big capital letters on the fridge in the paleontologist dig. And I had to do some like digging myself, and apparently it's an X-Files reference. I don't know. I haven't seen X-Files. I don't know if you guys have, but it was just weird when I was watching it. I was like, man, I've never noticed that newspaper before. I mean, you know, every single time you watch something, you see something new, I suppose. Yeah. But no, I'll have to rewatch Aliens now. I mean, you know, we almost did it for our 3-year anniversary show, so maybe I'll hold out until we finally do it. But
oh yeah, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can see the raptor vibes, you know, for the ending of the movie in it as well.
I like that matchup a little. You know, let's not do the same thing we keep doing to these Alien versus Predator. Let's get some Alien versus Velociraptor going.
You know what? Maybe I would be fine with that, because, you know, the Aliens franchise has gone completely off the rails. After this next Jurassic World movie, I suspect this franchise will as well. Maybe I'll be up for it at that point.
I like that they're advertising this next Jurassic Park movie as like the final movie. I like that it's the final movie before we announce the new one in 6 months.
Yeah, there was a huge gap between like Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic World. I feel like that was probably like 15 years, but I don't know. I can't see this movie not making like $1 billion. And then, you know, Universal loves money, right? They put out the Fast and Furious movies, right? There's no way if this thing does another $1 billion, they don't find some way how to bring it back in 5 years max, I would say.
So are we comfortable landing the plane, getting the rate in this bad boy?
Yeah, let's get into it.
So if you're new to the program, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Colton, this was your pick.
Yes.
What are you going to give it?
Yeah, obviously to me, this is a masterpiece. I mean, it's not any surprise. This is one of those that we've kind of danced around it a little bit, but it's like a movie that like filmmakers and aspiring filmmakers like love. It is something that it's very hard to achieve. I don't know if it's ever been achieved since this. It's magic, there's a little bit of horror in there. I absolutely love dinosaurs, and the music is so effective that like when it's reprised in Jurassic World and the T-Rex finally shows up, I teared up in the theater just because how powerful the music and nostalgia is, which is, I saw Mike's face, but it is kind of disgusting in a way, but it's like how powerful it is, like, that is like 20 years later, right? It did that to me. So yeah, no, this is definitely a sleigh for me. Like I said, I think it's a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Like on Letterboxd, you can choose 4 movies. Jurassic Park is one of mine. And it's a movie that's very near and dear to my heart, as I've kind of expressed throughout this podcast. So yeah, definitely a sleigh for me. What about you guys?
I will give it a yay. Like, I see its wondrous wonderfulness, the wonder and the magic of it all, and the skill and the filmmaking. I just, honestly, I'm really not a dinosaur person, so I just can't, like, it's been 10 years since I watched it, and it'll be 10 years or more before I watch it again. I'm just, like, that's just me being honest. Like, I can't, like, I recognize it as being good, and I, liked it when I was a kid, but it doesn't hold me in the same way that it does a lot of other people. So I'm recognizing its skill, but also saying, like, it's just personally, it's just a personal thing. It's not a sleigh for me. It's a yay. What about you, Ro?
Yeah, so I went into this expecting to give it a yay. Because like I said, like, I have a lot of nostalgia for it. This was like an iconic movie of my childhood. I was like Colton the dinosaur kid. I had dinosaur clothes. I had dinosaurs, everything. I remember the Jurassic Park Super NES game.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like Scholastic every month released Jurassic Park books that like each volume was on a different dinosaur. Like, I remember everything Jurassic Park. So I came into it being like, you know what? Like, I like this. I don't watch it all the time, but I definitely like it. It's definitely going to be a strong yay. But no, I'm going to give it a sleigh.
Yes.
I loved watching it this time. I am watching it with a horror lens and being like, yeah, like, this is definitely like a gateway horror movie for all the scenes we talked about that give you, the monster movies and the slasher movies, and probably we didn't even talk about it in the bulk of the review, but like my favorite reference of just the giant Jurassic Park doors giving us that throwback King Kong vibe. Absolutely loved it. And yeah, like this is one that, I'll probably make sure I check out again sooner than later. I already mentioned I see this whenever it comes up and they replay it in the theater. I think like when I lived in Halifax and in Calgary, they like played it for like, usually during the summer or whatever, they'll do like throwback of, big movies, and they'll bring them back to the theater. So I've gone and seen this, like I've seen this twice in the theater other than the original run. And it's awesome every time in the theater. It just doesn't get old.
Yeah, sadly for me, I think I've only ever seen it once in theaters. For sure, I know 100% I saw the Jurassic Park 3D re-release whenever they did that in like 2012 or 13, right? When 3D was all the rage, and there was absolutely no point to do this in 3D. I may have seen it, like kind of what you're saying, in like a throwback screening, maybe around when Jurassic World was coming out, but if I did, I don't remember it. I just remember the 3D screening.
2 sleighs and a yay. Mike has to be the contrarian, so
hey, that's better than what I was expecting from his messages earlier today about I'm not sure if you'd be able to stay awake and whatnot.
So now, we told you what we thought, and we're going to find out what you think, because we asked you guys your thoughts on Jurassic Park, And I know I saw we had 2 people answer. I thought we'd get more, but then I also feel that there is a little decisiveness on whether or not it's a horror movie. And I'm sure people saw our question and they're like, stay in your fucking lane at Slay's podcast.
I'm sorry. You know, I wasn't here when you guys chose a half a dozen other movies. I don't know if we're horror movies or not.
So we had friend of the podcast, author Brad Dunn, write in, who I'm pretty sure I saw voted no on if it was a horror movie.
I think so as well. And wasn't he on for Predator 1 and 2 with us?
Yes, I believe so.
Stay in your lane, Brad.
Yeah. So his was simple. His was just classic !
Excellent.
And then we had the _simple_life respond, and they said, I have no memory of it. I'm sure I've seen it a couple times, but it has never stuck. So I feel like someone more on Mike's side.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be the type of thing where maybe it's like a time for a rewatch as well. I don't know. Maybe they would appreciate it a little bit more. Or maybe they've just seen the Jurassic World movies, and I know a lot of people aren't big fans of those. So, you know, that'd kind of sour your opinion on it as well.
Go back, watch it. It's fantastic. It's a fun time.
All right, and once again, we had nobody leave a voicemail. I thought for sure with Jurassic Park there'd at least be like one hardcore fan like me or, you know, an aspiring filmmaker or somebody call in, but no, once again, the horrific hotline is empty. But if you'd like to do so in the future, you can give us a call at 1-902-418-8620. And once again, it only rings once and it goes through to voicemail. So, I mean, it's not too much pressure. None of us are going to pick up or anything. You know, and you got 90 seconds to leave a voicemail. So 1-902-418.
Mike isn't going to pick up.
No, Mike's not going to pick up. Sadly, maybe that would get more calls. I don't know.
I was going to say, listen, I'll just give you my number and you can just call me if you want to talk.
Mike's going to pick up and then he's just going to give shade at you and say, you're really calling in about this movie?
Yeah, so dial that number and Mike will pick up then. There we go. Perfect.
Done.
But yeah, I mean, if you made it this far in the podcast, you've probably already followed us on social media at It Slays Podcast. We're everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Slasher at It Slays Podcast. You know, we try and share whenever we're doing something. You can get in on the action. You know, you tell us your thoughts on the movie in the comments or on our stories or whatnot. But yeah, everywhere at It Slays Podcast. And Rowan, how about you plug the playlist?
So go on Spotify and you need some tunes. It's summertime, and what better way to, you know, feel like it's summertime than play some horror tunes? So go to the It Slays Podcast horrific playlist, give it a follow, and, you know, we add music from movies that we review that we enjoy, and just music in general from horror movies that we like. I'll make sure the theme song for this gets added so everyone can hum along with me, and I'm not the only guy just humming it all day long.
Oh, you're not the only one. I wind up humming it every single time I listen to it as well.
But all that is left is to announce our next episode, and it's a very special episode. It's that time. It's our Pride Pick, and the Pride Pick fell on me this year. So, you know, I had to do some soul searching, some thinking. What do we want to make you watch? Last year, you know, we stabbed you all with our dildo knives. You know, what are we going to do this year? And I know Mike's pumped for this one, and I think when I saw this the first time I saw it with Mike, I have picked High Tension as the Pride Pick film, the amazing French film. Or is it amazing? Yes. I can't really remember it entirely.
Well, tune in and find out. Tune in and find out.
Exactly.
Tune in to find out if Mike will choose to go the opposite direction that we go in.
Anything's possible.
But I think that is everything for this episode. Thank you for tuning in and supporting, and we will be back, I don't know, this week, next week. We'll be back at some point. I don't know if we have a Now Slain in the cusps. Maybe we'll find out.
I think there'll be one that comes out like 1 or 2 days before this episode, and then after that I have no clue. I haven't looked at the calendar yet.
We're just not that organized tonight, guys, so you know, blame it on Mike. Call in and Talk about how Mike's ruining everything.
Yeah.
So that is everything for now. Thank you. I am Rowan.
It's Mike. Bye.
And I'm Colton.
See you later.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
But the prime time gets.
Not with the new flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotape.